Well, I think it's about 11 o'clock. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining today's webinar. This is part 3 of a newly 5-part webinar series that is focused all on everything right-click tools. Today we'll be doing, this webinar will be on automation in action. So basically using Builder and Runner within right-click tools. Few housekeeping things per the usual. Keep the Q&A section for the questions. Keep the chat section for just, chit-chatting back and forth. If everyone could say hello, where they're tuning in from. That's super helpful. And just like the other webinars we've been doing earlier, we have 4 $100 gift cards we'll be passing out through this webinar. So having said that, you've got 2 great presenters today. You've got Courtney and Bryan, both come from systems engineer backgrounds as well as system admin backgrounds. It is Courtney's birthday this month, so feel free to say happy birthday to her in the chat channel. No pressure. And then a fun fact about Bryan is he enjoys brewing beer and smoking meats, specifically in that order. So having said that,
there's no order there. You could do both.
Oh no, it was very clear it's that order.
Hmm.
So having said that, Courtney, if you want to take us through the agenda, we'll get this thing going.
Yeah, so today's agenda is to introduce the right-click tools, but specifically Builder and Runner today. So I will go through some templates that we have that are available on our website and go through kind of how to use it. And then, of course, questions and answers after.
During. We could do it during.
Yeah, that's true. And thanks everyone for the happy birthday wishes.
Oh, is that supposed to do this part?
If you want to jump into, yeah, go for it. I think everyone can kind of read the screen as well. But Bryan, give us your opinion on the 3 pillars of right-click tools.
Oh man, they made me do the marketing slides. So the first pillar, the thing we talked about, the part that's like, yeah, it's where my heart is the marketing lexicon improve productivity. When I first started using the right-click tools, however many years ago, it's all about quality of life issues for a system administrator. So if you're using Config Manager, you live, breathe, and die in the console. And so even within the console, there's certain things that like I just within Config Manager, very Config Manager kinds of things that it's like, well, this works, but the UI or things aren't joined, things aren't combined in the way I want. And then there's just even outside of Config Manager, there's things where it's like, well, I'm in this console, I have users, and I have devices in front of me all day long. I'd really like just to be able to do other things to them, right? Not necessarily delivering applications or software updates within Config Manager, but I might want to reboot it, or whatever it is you want to do. I might want to disable it in Active Directory, right? There's just all sorts of adjacent device and user management things that we want to do, and that's the core of what the right-click tools attempts to do, which is take the Config Manager console as an entry point for as a UI to give you other things you can do. The next pillar is actionable insights. So where I think of this is when we came time to build reports, we're like, well, we're going to build reports in the console, but there's no point building those unless you can't then go do something with that data. And I don't mean like you take that data and you export it to Excel and you do some other things. I mean, we give you that data and then you can right-click on that data and then actually start taking actions, right? So everyone says, every reporting technology is like, oh, you can take actual insights. And what we mean by that is, no, you can, in the reports, you can right-click on it and then do things there to those devices. And so that's, for me, what sets us apart there. And then what we're going to talk about today is powerful automation. This is going to be this is the thing we're going to try to focus on, both in this webinar, but also just going forward. All of our tools that we build, everything we're going to build is going to be built with this premise of, we want to make sure that this could be automated, which is to say that you don't need to use, that as we build the tool, that the tool itself is worked and provides value, but that there's things behind there that are actionable from an automation standpoint. So if we, to take an example, we have a tool that disables something in Active Directory. Well, then we have an automation through our automation platform, you could do that same thing. And so every product we're going to build, it's going to be built with that in mind, which is, how do we provide for automation, just by the fact of building that tool and building new capabilities, that lights up stuff in automation if you want to slice and dice in a different way.
Wow, that was very well said. Thank you, Brian. I wanted to say that's probably the best, explanation of our 3 pillars that we've had so far in this series. So thank you.
Not bad for not actually reading the slide, isn't it?
It's amazing what can happen. Yeah, that's great.
I didn't read it all. I know read too good.
And then here's some of our select customers, just to show that we do actually have customers that purchase our product and use us. I don't know if we mentioned before, but our NPS score is extremely high, so we're very proud of that. But enough about that chit chat. Let's actually dive into what we're here for. And Courtney, if you want to walk us through some of the automated tasks you built, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you. We will get over to the good stuff, which is of course the builder and the runner. So with builder and runner, the idea behind it is to create a kind of essentially a giant right-click tool where you can put a bunch of tasks together, other right-click tools, and make one easy to use right-click tool. So you can access it from different nodes. So I can select a computer and go to right-click tools and select builder or runner. I can even just, if I don't want to pick a device, I can go to devices and go to right-click tools and open builder. When you're clicking on builder, it doesn't matter what you're selecting because you're not actually running it against a device. It's just pulling up this window right here. So in this case, I have a few templates that are now available on our website. Some of these are newer. The reboot, if pending restart, it has been on there for a little while, but it's one of my favorites that I like to talk about. In showing this workspace, you first start to do, you can add a new action, or if you want to import a new action, you can click on any in this white space and hit import. So if you pick, it's just an XML document that you can download off of our website, save it, and then you can go ahead and hit import. If you want to share with other people, you can export it and maybe give it to a colleague if you're in standalone. If not, you can, if you're connected to the Recast management server, you should have access to other users' builder actions. And this can be modified. So if you're working on building an action, but you don't want to give it to everyone, you can go over to your Recast roles. And I'm just going to pick on desktop support. And under the builder action, you'll actually see the name of the builder that you're working on, or you've created. So you can actually select which builder action that you want users to use. So if I don't want maybe the desktop support to be able to run clear cache, I just keep that one unchecked. Or if I want them to be able to do this all client policies and the Bitlocker Recovery one, I can select those, save it, and then they have only access to those 2 actions instead of all the ones that might be available in your environment. So with that being said, in here you'll start first with a new action, and you start with this builder node. And this builder node essentially means whatever you're kind of clicking on. So if you're clicking on multiple devices, if you're clicking on a collection, this is where it grabs that information. So it's grabbing off of the whatever you've selected. And then over here on your right is all your Recast actions. And those are pretty much anything you can do with the right-click tools. We have an action for it. So if you know kind of where that action might be, you can just expand and you can see all the different options, or you can search here too. I'm a big fan of searching, easier to find things. And then when you find what you want, let's see, let's start off. I always like to start off with networking and ping computer, just so that it only continues on the action if the ping comes back as true. because I don't want to waste, a builder action on, a device that might not be on. So I just drag and drop here. And then I created this little arrow from going to the circle anywhere in this big blue box. So you create this arrow, and this kind of tells you what direction that you want to go in. So I want the start node to the ping computer. And then I'm going to pick on a machine retrieval policy. And I'm going to go from this dot to the big blue, and then it creates another arrow. So the arrows are what actually they're called an edge, and the edges are what actually holds the information for what to do next or in the previous step. So I have this this builder action where it will ping the computer first, but I only want it to move on to this next section if it comes back as true. So I can add a condition in here by just clicking this new condition, and the output is successful. So pretty much if that ping comes back as successful, I'm going to select this value because I want it to be true, then it moves on. So I don't want it to, keep going if the computer's not on, because it's just going to come back as unsuccessful. So I add that input in there. So then I can go, maybe next I want to do this discovery data. So in this builder action, I'm kind of just going to do I just want all the policies to run. So I have maybe new computers when they get online for the first time, and I want them to just check in with config manager. I want the client to check in, see if there's any apps, things like that. So in this case, this all client policies, which I'm working on, is going to go through all the cycles that make it check in with config manager, so that I can just run it when it first starts, and then it will automatically, I don't have to wait for it to check in. I don't have to just sit there and hope it checks in eventually, things like that. So I can just kick it off. So, you just have to drag and drop whatever cycles you want in whatever order is preferred. I have this one that I've already started, and this one has all the different cycles, which is available on our website, which I can show you here. So we have all our templates on our docs.recastsoftware.com, and it looks like Jeff put it also in the chat. So it's under right-click tools, features, and then workflow automation builder runner. And you can see this builder template. And this is the one I'm currently talking about, which is these all client policies. So this XML, I just click on, save it, and then import it into builder, and it does all the different cycles. So you can go through all of those, and you can customize it too. So if I didn't want one of these cycles, maybe I didn't want software updates, I can just hit the delete button. It deletes it out of there. And I'm like, all right, we're just going to skip that one and create a new arrow. So now it skips that one. I don't have to deal with it. And maybe it's unnecessary, or move it somewhere else, things like that. Then we have things like reboot if pending restart. So this also does something similar, where it pings the computer, and then it will grab the pending restart information. So I have in this arrow that it is successful equals true. So it only moves on to this next step if it pings. And then it has an input parameter. So what input parameters are is, what do you want this, this action to do? So in system information, you can actually see if a computer is pending a restart. So I have this box checked where it loads the pending restart information and hits, and I have it checked. So what that will do, we'll grab the pending restart information. And then in this next arrow, I have a condition. So based on what it returns, if it comes back as true, I added a value here, it will move on to this next section. And then this next section has the input parameters as restart is checked. So I want it to restart if it comes back as true. It won't restart if it is false. So you have other things like skip if a user's logged in. So maybe if a user's logged in, I don't want it to do anything. or add maybe a countdown timer. I can also add a user message that says, hey, you got 5 minutes and it's restarting, whether you like it or not. You can also add, you can add another branch as well. So I don't know, we're gonna pick on clear cache. So maybe if it's pending a restart and it comes back as false, maybe I want to go it in this direction. So I have my condition here, pending restart equals true, but then I want to add in here that this input parameter, pending restart, is actually false. So I add false in here and it is equal to false. So now it's going to go clear cache if it comes back as false. So then I can have it go split off into different directions based on, what the parameter is, or, maybe a better idea would have been to, install software updates. So then I do something like this instead, where I install the software updates. I have this as, pending restart equals false. And then, it goes and installs software updates. I could maybe loop it back around if I wanted to, so that it checks if it doesn't, or you can just keep going down this branch or a different branch, add another section for a different condition, things like that. And the next one we have is the Bitlocker Recovery key. So this one I've just added as a one where you can kind of customize the input parameters. So this is a get recovery password, and it has an option for a drive letter. So I could manually, if I wanted to, add a constant, so it maybe always picks from the C drive. I could do that, but maybe, maybe sometimes I have, I want the recovery password from a different drive and I don't want to change it every time. So what I did was I came over to the start node and added a custom input parameter. So in this case, I chose a string and I created it here, and then I went to a list. So I wanted a list where it has every single drive possible in here that I can select from at the very beginning. So I can have a default selection. So most of the time it's going to be the C drive, but I added the option to pick, a different letter if I want. So I could, if I wanted to pick the D drive, C drive, G, all the other letters of the alphabet. And so when I am in this edge, I can map this parameter. So I'm going to do a parameter mapping where the node is get restart password from device. From the start node and then the drive letter, because that's what I named the start parameter. So in here, I had labeled it drive letter so that I would know. And so then I came over to this edge. The start node is where that parameter is, and then this drive letter is what I want. So after you've, saved things like that, save whatever policies you want to run, save whatever builder actions you want to run, then I can go ahead and actually run the action on these devices. So I'm going to pick on this computer, and you can do this against device collections, a singular device, multi-select, and run it. And so when I'm happy with my builder action, or I just want to test it out, make sure it's functioning correctly, I can go to RCT runner, and then it will have all the actions I have available. So I could, pick on the reboot if pending restart. In this case, I want to get the Bitlocker recovery password. And so this is where that input parameter comes from. So in this one, I have the option to select all those input parameters that I had written in that builder action. So I could pick on a different drive. I'm going to pick on C drive. So then I can hit next. And then in here, you can actually schedule it. You can run it immediately, or you can schedule the action. If you have the Recast proxy installed, which is with the Recast management server, you can actually schedule the action to run. So I could do it maybe later that day if I want to, or maybe I want an interval. Maybe I like the reboot if pending restart is great to maybe run once a day. So, at like 3 a.m. and you can have it restart if it does indeed if it does show that it's needs to be restarted. In this case, I just want to run it immediately and hit finish. And then I have it grabs those recovery passwords for me, and I can see which device and what actions. So I can close that one. So something like the action of reboot if pending restart. So in Builder, you can also add how you want to see the results. So in the one that I just showed you, in the Bitlocker one, on the start node, I have actually selected that I just want to see the result in a single grid result view. So that will show just the single one because I only have a single action in here, so I don't really need a lot of information. But something like the reboot if pending restart, maybe I want to see at what stage or like what every action does. So in here, I actually hit the view as tabbed results. So this instead will look more like this. If I go to runner, which I think I already had open, I can click on the reboot if pending restart. I'll run it immediately. So it looks like it didn't restart because there's no value here, but it did ping. So I can see that it was ping successful. And then I have a pending restart. So it looks like it came back as false. So this computer isn't pending a restart. So there was nothing under restart computer. So I can see that it came back as false. And I could do this about against a bunch of devices, so I can see at what stage, maybe it failed, or maybe, I want to see certain information, things like that. So, a nice thing about this is you can also zoom out if you need to, or zoom in. So with like the client policies, you can see there's quite a few of them in here. So maybe I need to zoom out and I can rearrange this way. I can drag, move around, and they still stay connected. I can zoom in if needed, get a better, closer look. And there we go. It's nice and big and everyone can see it. So you can kind of do a lot of different things with Builder, which almost makes it that much harder because you're like, I can do so many things, what to do. So we do have those templates you can download, get kind of an idea how to use it. Some of them come with videos as well. So you can kind of see how it's done. There's also a video on the web that you can see how to like import and export. And if you're using like standalone, if you want to share it with someone, you'll have to actually export the Builder action because it won't be available to everyone else. So do keep that in mind. But you can definitely share with your colleagues. I always recommend testing it at least on a device first when you're building things, just to make sure it's functioning as you expect. And then always use this search. This search is fantastic if you're looking for anything specific. It helps narrow down what you're looking at, because it can be, I think we have over 400 some odd actions over here on the right. So you have quite a few options to choose from. So let's see if we have any questions. So it looks like Brian's answering some questions over here, but
I'm typing furiously.
I'll read one off for you, Courtney.
There we go.
Can automations be scheduled to run, or is it an only on-demand right-click thing at this time?
You can schedule it, so you can use the runner under here and then just schedule the action. You do need the Recast proxy because it pretty much just creates like a scheduled task that it runs. So you do need the Recast proxy to have that run. And you can set an interval date and an end date as well. So if I only want it to run for a week, but maybe every day for that week, you can go ahead and set that as well.
Great.
Do you want to answer any of those questions out loud, Brian?
Sure. One thing I'll say about the scheduled action is, like, we've seen people use that successfully to run things on a specific on collections, right? So the example we've seen is, let's say you have a bunch of lab machines and you want them to shut down at the end of the day or week, but you have this collection that's going to constantly change, right? You might be adding or subtracting labs, or you might split a lab into one collection or the other. And so, like, you always want to make sure at the end of the day that every device in this particular collection is shut down, just to save power. And that's it's a good example of what Builder can do in terms of, hey, we're going to schedule an action. That action is going to go run and get all the collections in this device. Sorry, all the devices in this collection. Flip that around, and then run an action on it. Let's see, if I use a script in one of the RCD Builder steps, does it save the script in RCD? So the question is, okay, somebody uses signed PowerShell scripts. So it saves it in the XML itself, right? So I think, as Courtney mentioned, that these all these actions get saved as XML. They get saved in the recast management, or sorry, in the database in some way, shape, or form. So whatever you and there was a question earlier about PowerShell. So if you just want to drag that on there, that script, and let's hook it up just so we can kind of see how it works. So you can have a script. So you can you plug your script in there. And this is going to get, I mean, ultimately, whatever you type in here will get saved with the action itself. So it's not saving it to a file and loading it or anything like that. And so if you need it to be signed, if I remember right, when you sign a PowerShell file, it'll add a bunch of the signature at the end of it, or the hash, or whatever it is. And you would need to include that here. I think that's exactly like Config Manager's PowerShell thing works. The other thing I'll mention is if you put in a function or a commandlet, I'm not sure it's one or the either or both, we'll actually try to interpret the input parameters. So that allows you to write a function in PowerShell. Yeah, don't make a liar out of me, but I have tested this and it does work. And then we'll allow you to map those input parameters. And then you can also do the reverse, although it gets a little weird. Is if you're specifically outputting something, it's a little tricky to do because you need to actually know exactly what's coming out of it, but you should be able to map the output of a PowerShell script into another action. So you could go from one of our actions into PowerShell to do something very specific, and then you could come back into one of our actions. Is there a question why software inventory is listed twice within the all client template? No, probably by accident. I don't think any thought was specifically given to that template, other than people kept asking for it in the product. People wanted us to give the ability to right click on a device and run all of it. And we've hesitated to do that. We said, well, just go make a builder action. But the builder action is literally like the simplest builder action in the world. So if you want to rearrange it for reasons, by all means, go for it. Already done that one. Can you utilize this to implement encryption password bypass on collections? I'm not sure what you mean by implement encryption password bypass. So I don't. I don't know.
So if you could rephrase that question, whoever submitted it, that would be great.
It's Sandra Ferrara. I'm presume she's talking about. Sorry, I presume they're talking about Bitlocker. I'm just not sure what they mean. Mike's someone asked, I always need to undo a build, a builder action. Now there is no undo, right? There's no reverse. You have done a thing. If you want to undo the thing, you're going to need to build an action that undoes it.
That's an interesting question. But
yeah, there's some really good ideas in here, and we should post I'll go find the feature request because there was a really good idea of like, hey, if we reboot, are we looking to see if config manager is installing an application, right? So or it had to do with the pending reboot, right? If you look at our reboot if pending restart, what we're doing there is we're running an action to look at the device and say, hey, is this thing pending a reboot? Now that could actually happen during the process, a longer process of either application or software updates installation, right? So let's say you're installing 5 apps or 5 updates, doesn't really matter. The first one says, hey, triggers a reboot. So if we run it right after that first app, system information is going to be, yeah, there's actually a pending restart, and it's going to go try and do it, even though config manager might currently be still doing stuff. And the restart computer is Honey Badger, it don't care. So if you tell it to reboot, it's going to reboot. We do have the skip if user logged in, but we have a feature request board. Jeff, if you could find that URL and plug that in somewhere. I think it'd be great to have like either an option on restart or just an action that says, hey, is config manager currently installing an app or a update or something, right? Is it taking an action? Good, like that would be useful to know. And I think the other one along a similar vein was maintenance windows, right? Do our actions respect maintenance windows? And the answer to that is no. But it's a great idea. And how I would see that come into play isn't like, oh, our actions respect maintenance windows, but we should have an action that says, hey, is a maintenance window active on this device? And if so, allow give you a meaningful response so that you can branch or put a condition on there. I say that because most of our, as much as we love config manager, I spent, that's where my heart still is. Most of our tools have nothing to do with config manager, right? Like rebooting the device has nothing to do with config manager. And in fact, if you go to those actions there and you just unfilter from tasks, like we have hundreds of actions, and most of them have nothing to do with config manager, right? MBAM, network, PowerShell, there's all this stuff that has nothing to do with config manager. There is a lot of config manager stuff, but it's all sitting there in config manager client server. So we don't require that as a rule. You don't need config manager at all to run the action. Like it's the entry point. It's the entry point for the UI, but the endpoint doesn't need to have a config manager agent. And so that's why I say, the way we would do a maintenance window is, well, we should have an action that says, is there a maintenance window? And it returns yes or no, or whatever the situation is, however we design that. And then you can take an action that way.
Yeah, I think
so Sandra followed, she wants to script a McAfee password bypass. I mean, so if you want, you would use if you wanted to run some custom script, you could use PowerShell to do it. So yeah, we can run. We have the ability to run PowerShell. And it, anytime I look at that, your situation there is specific to like a McAfee password thing, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, I mean, we probably would never build that action. I look at the PowerShell as, well, we need it because there's holes to plug, but I always I always want to know if you're resorting to using PowerShell, because that means there's a gap in the tool, right? And I'd rather fill that tool with an action that makes sense instead of having you to write PowerShell. So I kind of look at it as like, hey, if you're writing PowerShell, it means in 90% of the cases we're failing, or where we could do a better job lowering that bar. Do you have an example of what kind of notifications you receive? For example, if you request them to reboot the machine. I don't know that we have any. I mean, I don't know if you have the endpoint that you're connecting to. We also, what I will say is, we do have a send notification tool, right? So the Restart Computer has its own, built-in, hey, do you want to notify? And that, I will tell you, it's a very basic Windows dialog that pops up and says, you're getting rebooted in X seconds, or whatever your configuration is. But if you wanted to do a little bit more than that, we have a send notification. I don't know what plugin is. You'll have to search for it, Courtney. And that one gives you a couple of options. Yeah, there you go. Oh, that's right. The specific. We have you can do the config manager client. Has toast, so you can pop up a little notification that way. You can do a recast toast notification. There's I don't know what it's called. Like, there should be another one that just pops up a dialog. So and I think that answers John's. So specifically the ones that are built. So John asked, how are the notifications presented to the user? The one built into the system reboot is just, I believe that's just a straight dialog box. Hey, it's a Windows dialog box. But you see here the other options we have. If you want a better, different way of sending that notification, we have exactly those actions to do it. And there's different kinds. There's both config manager toast. There's our own toast notification. But if you use our own, I mean, there's pros and cons here. There should be a third one. I don't know what it's called, but that's just like a straight Windows dialog. Maybe it's not a separate action, and we should make it that. But like, there's pros and cons to the notifications. If you do a Windows dialog, it's like, well, that will work everywhere. Like, we're using a basic, like pretty low grade Windows API to send that notification. Yeah. So there's recast toast. Windows pop-up. Is it called Windows pop-up? Is that what it's called?
That's what I'm gonna go check. No.
I wonder if we have it as a distinct action.
Might be.
You also have to spell Windows, right? But
yeah, that does help.
No, I don't see it. We should make that one. But that one works by, again, it's kind of a low-level Windows API thing. So like, it's pretty basic, but it will work everywhere. Then you have the config manager toast notification. That works everywhere you have config manager, right? Like, if the agent doesn't have config manager, then, well, there's no toast, there's no config manager to send a toast. Then the last one, I shouldn't say last, but the other one is like recast toast notification. So hey, you always have it. That will always be there, but we actually have to reach out and send a thing to that device. So you may not like that, right? Like, we actually have to send a very small executable onto the device to be our toast notification. If you're using, so like, maybe your security isn't going to let that happen, or you just don't like that idea, right? So there's pros and cons to which of those you're going to use. How do you remove an action? So you can just, there's on the left there, you can just delete. Right, like, can you delete your new action there off to the left? Oh, I see. You mean like delete, like, okay, well, there's two levels. There's like deleting the action within the thing, you just push the delete key. But then I think they might mean over on the left, right? Like, let's say you've created a builder action and now you want to, there's a delete key.
Yeah, so if I don't want this new action, I can just go ahead and hit delete, delete the whole action.
So when a tool has been, actually, so Sandra asks, thinking in terms of utilizing feature updates on system. Oh, I see. Yeah, okay. So your use case, Sandra, is that you want to do feature updates, but you have McAfee, and that creates issues with feature updates because they would normally disable BitLocker. It's a really great use case. So in theory,
You think
Can
about
you
that
look
one.
up?
I want to come back to it. Hold on.
Well,
Ye-
okay.
I was
Was
just
it?
gonna skip to the next one where it's showing the log. So
Oh
I can
yeah.
see all the different things I've been doing in the Recast management server. One of the plus sides of that is the audit log, where you can actually see what I've been doing in the past little while. Let's see, where did I? Oh, it looks like there's other people in here. So let's see. Let's look for me. So I can hit view results and see what I was doing. So this is all the results of that. And then I have run a saved action. So I can hit view results. And then this is all the information on that runner action.
Yeah. In the there's also some. This is we call this the audit log, and what it's showing you is the results. There's also logging. I mean, if you're just a log nerd, like the wherever that action got routed to, there'll be logging there as well. So if you go back into Builder there, I want to see the look. Do a filter for update. Okay, so probably under client, install software updates. So if you really wanted to, Sandra, so your feature update thing where, and again, I totally get it. You have third-party disk encryption and that creates a problem. In theory, I think what you could do is you could create a builder action that disables your encryption with that, and then you could use this install software updates by ID. As long as that ID is the same, but basically, I think you might be able to combine some of these install software updates, install software IDs, or missing software updates to either get the list of updates that are missing software updates will give you the list of updates that it's looking for, and then you could put in some logic to figure out, oh, it's the FU update I want. You got to get that. If you can get the ID of the feature update, then you can use install software updates by ID to go install it. So you could actually put that together. So then, anonymous. We have anonymous in here. For the toast notification, you have an option to use custom pictures or just generic Windows Toast. If you use the Recast toast, like I said, there's pros and cons to the different options. One of the pros is with well, let's do the con, right? So send Windows pop-ups dialog, no log. It's just a Windows dialog. You're not going to get an icon. With the CM Toast notification, you'll get a notification, but it kind of looks like it's coming from Config Manager. There's no icon there. But if you use our Recast Toast notification, well, then you can include your own logo, and it will show up. And there's there's other things we could do with this Toast notification. Like we have like ideas, man. We would love to iterate and make a better solution there. And if you have any specific ideas, again, I would tell you to hit up our feature request board.
Any other questions? Any other last minute questions anyone has?
Yeah, and if you ask it, I'm looking at chat. There's a lot. I'll try and sift through chat. But if anybody was in chat and did get an answer, again, click on Q&A at the bottom there. Because Don asks, how do you disable Bitlocker? I think if we look at the Bitlocker actions there. So if you unfilter there.
Sorry, what am I looking for?
I just want to expand Bitlocker. I just want to see what actions they are. Can we suspend? Yeah, I don't think we can disable it. I think we suspend it. I mean, all of this stuff is using all of these things are using Bitlocker PowerShell commands or executables, right? So I don't actually know off the top of my head exactly how suspend Bitlocker works, but my guess is it's like manage.bde and then some parameters. I mean, again, totally spitballing. Bitlocker is a thing that I only know enough to be dangerous with. In something, because we're here, right? So if you look off to the right, the way I like to talk about Builder in general, and I'm going super high level to see if there's any other question there. But when I talked about like how we think of automation and how it's sort of built into everything we do, that's what you're seeing off to the right. So the reason that there's hundreds, I forget what the count was, but the reason that you see hundreds of things off to the right there is because because those happen, I don't want to say by accident, but they are like inherent in the way that we develop our tool set, which is, hey, when we want to do a thing, when we want to add functionality to any of the tool set, we're going to write these, what we call backend or server actions. And those are the things that actually reach out and do the thing, right? And the way we write them is by creating these functions. Like the functions the actions you see on the right are literally the exact same code that we're using in our own right-click tools front end. So, whatever our Bitlocker tools are, those tools require that we have these actions built. And so as we build new tools, as we add new feature functionality, things just magically will appear here with each new release. Olex, can we create an action to get the Bitlocker key from Azure AD for a specific machine? Not yet. We do not have much integration with Azure Active Directory yet. And we need to fix that. Like, we're painfully aware. I think I will say our bigger thing for Bitlocker is we need to spend some time supporting the config manager integration for Bitlocker because we're dicey on that front. Some of the stuff works, but some of it doesn't. And that's because the product team, when they integrated Bitlocker, well, MBAM, I should say, sorry, I should be clarified, MBAM. When the config manager team integrated MBAM, they took 90% of it, but what they left out was the administrative service. So MBAM has its own admin service. And don't confuse that with config manager's admin service. But there was an admin service for MBAM, and when the product team moved that over, they did not integrate that yet. And we have figured out, I think, a way around that. We need to go do that. But then a higher level, yeah, absolutely, Azure Active Directory is a thing that we need to do. So
the
Matt
only thing
asks,
you can do is back up the key protector to Azure.
oh, we did add that. I didn't even know that. I wasn't even literally looking at the screen that put it right in front of my mind.
Right here.
So that's a good question. If we're doing that, like if you drag that in there, what are the inputs to that?
Computer name.
Okay, you should. Sorry, I don't have the name in front of me, but whoever requested that, hey, can we get the backup key or whatever from Azure Active Directory? You should go add that to the feature, because maybe we don't. I always think, we need to a more comprehensive support for Azure AD. Like if you expand the Active Directory node there, Courtney, in the top right, like the actions.
Sorry, I was reading what.
Just can you expand the Active Directory
Yes.
plug in there, right? Like, we have all sorts of Active Directory stuff. We should have the same thing for Azure Active Directory, right? Like, whatever makes sense, of course. But like, we should totally have an Azure Active Directory plugin. But maybe we don't need that full kind of integration to do the Bitlocker stuff. Maybe. Can we associate runner task with an application deployment? Something like a restart, if required, will run before an application install. So there's nothing you can do. That was asked by Matt. Great question. And there's nothing, we have thought about that, and I think it'd be a really interesting use case, which is how would you trigger something? I mean, okay.
You could do it the reverse, where you have it actually like install, like, so the application installs and then it will reboot if it's required type thing. You do something like
Yeah,
that where instead you're like triggering it to run like once a day on a collection
right,
type thing.
right. There is another thing. I shouldn't even say these words out loud, but like there is some bubble gum and baling wire I think you could put together there, because Config Manager pushes out state messages and status messages. And I forget which one there is, but you can create state or status message rules. I just forget which one of those it is. And that would allow you, in theory, you could actually create a status message rule, and then you could write some PowerShell that would, in theory, go trigger a builder action. I think, like that's the most like bubblegum and baling wire kind of thing, but it's the stuff that gets my mind working. Like, could you put that together? Yeah, you could. How supported would it be? It should work. And you should definitely ask Courtney about that after this.
Oh, thanks, Ryan.
Courtney, yeah, Courtney's totally gonna. She's our PowerShell expert, so she'll totally help you with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but Courtney's like, if there's a specific app, if you go back to the config manager client one, do we have like an install app, like a specific app? Like, I want to know, like.
So you have like install application program, software updates, things like that.
Okay, got it. So yeah, what I hear you saying, Matt, is that, hey, I'd like this just to automatically trigger based on things like, I want the action to trigger based on stuff that's happening in config manager, whether that's config manager client, config manager agent. And the answer there is like, yeah, there's nothing built into our tools. There's some really awful ways you could probably hack around that with status message rules and config manager trigger action. The more succinct way would be to actually do that whole bit in here. But I don't know that that's as satisfying of an answer, that last one, which is, well, you could run an action that installs the update or installs the application and then triggers a reboot. But I don't think that's really what. I think that misses the trigger you're looking for, and so that's nowhere near as satisfying. Have the templates be implemented for every user, or are they shared? So this gets a good question. I don't think we. Well, it was a question that was asked earlier, but the question is, does Build and Runner work in standalone? And the answer to that is yes, absolutely. It works in standalone. The difference is that in standalone, you're all by yourself. You're all by yourself. You're very lonely. All of your actions will appear for you and only you, and that's because they're stored locally, right? Like I said, at the end of the day, these are XML. They get saved, and they, if you don't have a Recast management server, you don't have a database that backs that Recast management server, which means there's nowhere to share those across different users. But if you have a Recast management server, then all of these things are saved.
Centralized
are saved and loaded from Recast management server, and they're shared. You can, as I think you're about to, you can export it and have somebody else import it, right? So if you're in standalone mode and you have 3 different administrators, you could write your builder action, export it, give them an XML file, and tell those 2 other people to do it. And then every time you update it, you have to go do that whole thing, which sounds like a pain. The answer is use Recast management server. There was another question earlier about, what was it? Because you had said, Courtney, like, hey, or at least in the demo, right? You right-clicked on a collection, I think, to start builder, or whatever object you create a builder. And the question, and you answered this, you said this, but I just want to reinforce it, which is like, oh, does this action then just show for that collection or that device? And the answer is no. It doesn't really matter. Well, this is one of those, it depends. So go ahead and right-click Close Builder for a second, and start it from a device. Yeah.
So yeah, this will show more than what I have because it is a different node. So if you start from the devices or a device, you'll kind of have based on what node you selected. So these are the three that
Right.
I have in the bigger, devices node. So they show up in here, but these ones are like a device specific type builder.
Right. So if you go to the start node, so and then do the action type drop down there for me. So if you go to start node, action type. So when we create an action, we high level have three different kinds of action types. There's generic, device, and user. Yeah, forget the with ID and without resource ID. But what we'll try to do is if you start builder or runner from a device object, whether that's a collection or a single device, we should default to, we're going to create a device action. And so in theory, when you go to runner, only device actions show up on devices, only user action shows up on users. Generic exists because there's actually an installation parameter. You can put builder on every object in config manager. So if you want to not just run actions against a device or a user, you could run actions against a software update group, right? If you wanted to write your own, like, hey, we want to clear a software update group, like I think you could do that, and you could put that right on the software update group using builder. In another way, kind of mind-bending way to think of it is when you create an action on a collection of devices, let's say, the sort of presumption is, well, you really want to run that action against the devices in the collection. But if you create a generic type, you can actually run against the collection itself, right? So I want to, let's say you wanted to add devices to the collection, not, then you want that action to run against the collection, not the devices in it, right? If you have 10 devices, you don't want to run the action 10 times saying add to collection. I know it's weird, but like, we can act both on the object within config manager, but then for users and devices, we're trying to also be intelligent and say, oh, what you really want here is to run this against the actual device or user. Paul asks, can we deploy specific feature updates with notification user logic not to present the notification if the user isn't logged in? If the user isn't logged in, reboot once complete, or is that beyond the bounds of built-in runner? Can we deploy specific feature updates? User logic. Kind of, I think. I think this goes back to when we were talking about, how do we disable third-party encryption, right? So in theory, you could write an action that says, hey, we want to install this specific update, right? So you can give us the update ID and we'll install that if it's there. And then our reboots, if you go back to any of the reboot actions, the reboot action has an option that says, skip if a user is logged in or give them a countdown. So what we can't do is disable. So just what I want to clarify is we can't disable config managers notifications, right? So there's no way. If you really wanted to, I'm just thinking through.
Now we have about a minute left, and Jeff's.
We have infinite. We have infinite time. There's no end time here. So in theory, you could deploy the feature update as silently as you want, right? So you could create a deployment that says, hey, don't even show it in Software Center, or don't give them any notifications whatsoever. And then you could, in theory, build a builder action, I believe, that could then go through that process, right? You could again send them whatever notification you want and get the allow them to cancel it or not, and then you could go install that specific update by the ID. And again, if you're hiding all notifications, then you could use your notification that says, hey, we're going to reboot, send a notification again, or you could use the reboot action, and that reboot action has a couple of options. One is show the notification, give them a countdown, or you can actually skip that reboot if they're logged in. So yeah, in theory, I think that is possible. Can it run an action reboot then install an application after restart? Maybe is the answer, Sean. And Courtney and I were actually just having this discussion right before this, which is I am uncertain how running builder actions survive a reboot. And it's going to come down to how we route the action. And that gets a little bit beyond the scope of this webinar, but there's different ways we get that action to the device. And my sneaking suspicion, which I can neither confirm nor deny, is that if you are using our agent, right? If you have an agent, then I think we're going to push this action down the agent. So all of this stuff will happen on the agent itself. If you reboot the agent while it is running its own builder action, I don't think we survive that. I don't think we do. I need to test it, but I don't think we do. I think if you run it and it hits a proxy, I think it should. I think you would be able to do that as long as it's hitting a proxy, I think. But don't ask. Don't quote me on that. And then Grant asks, are the builder actions being run on a system account or logged in user account? Very similar answer to what I just said before. It depends on how you route it. And so with Recast Management Server, we have a big part of what Recast Management Server, a big part of what Enterprise gives you over the community tools. Even if all you're using is the community tools, the reason you might actually get Enterprise is because Enterprise with Recast Management Server, with Recast Proxy and Recast Agent gives you different modes of getting that action down to the device. So in community, your only option is the user that's running the console. They have to reach out over the network, and as that user, they're going to need to do whatever the action is, right? So that means that user both needs direct line of sight over the network, but they also need whatever rights it is in whatever system it is to do the thing you want to do. And so if you're going to do something that requires local administrator, then the person running the tool, the person running the console has to be local administrator on that box. And you will need remote, you'll probably need admin shares, you need remote and win, like there's a whole bunch of stuff you're going to need to be enabled. But that doesn't, and so I call that simple mode. So in simple mode, yeah, things work. You have line of sight to everything, everything's on-prem, and you're a local, you're running the console as a user that has local admin everywhere. If that doesn't work for you, you want Enterprise, because Enterprise will allow you to set up a proxy, and super simple, a proxy would allow you to use a system, a service account, right? So now you can have a service account that's denied local login or remote logins, but has local admin on some subset of devices. You can have multiple proxies and multiple service accounts if you want to further divide it.
Works nice in multiple domains too.
Right. Yeah. We brought that initially for multiple, exactly, to deal with specifically untrusted domains. You might have domain A and domain B, and they don't trust each other. And so again, your console user can't be in both domains. So how do you make that work? Proxy is the answer. And it does exactly what it sounds like. We are proxying that action to a different machine. It is running it as you asked it to, but with a different account. But then the last mode we have, and this is optional, we have the Recast agent, right? So Grant, you say, does it run a system account? It can. If you install agent on your devices, then we will route that action to that agent. That agent is running as a Windows service, as system, and so all of these things will run as system. So short, great question, very short, and as my typical want is, I answered it in a very long form fashion. Okay, now I'll let Jeff finish this up. But if anybody still has a question, I'm totally going to interrupt him and answer it.
Yeah, fabulous job, Courtney and Bryan. Thank you for going through and answering all those questions. I think we had probably 35 to 40 come through, which is great that we're able to provide answers, and great that we had such good viewer engagement. So we've got 2 more webinars coming up next month. The next one is software updates. This will be a dashboard within right-click tools. And then wrapping up the 5-part series will be April 20th. And that webinar will be dedicated to endpoint insights and all of the fun system hardware or information that endpoint insights can pull out. So very exciting stuff. We hope to see you all next month as well. Per the usual, if you have any questions or want to find out more about what other software Recast has, or just want to know more about the builder runner that Courtney and Bryan showed off today, feel free to get a hold of us. And having said that, thank you all very much. Angela, Caesar, Greg, and Rebecca, you are the 4 lucky winners of the $100 gift cards. So we'll be sending those out to you all shortly after this presentation. Once again, thank you all for attending. Thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Bryan. I think everyone did a fabulous job.
There was one last very good question. How do you get a Recast onesie? You troll our marketing department on Twitter. That's how you get Recast onesie. Or
That is a very
bribes.
true statement.
Or bribes work. I have a big box of these things. I can be bribed.